Yep, looks like we're live. All right, good day, everyone. And welcome to a very special panel discussion, the human side of hiring, how to stay empathetic in a world of AI. I'm Chavi, content manager at Recruit CRM, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. It's cool to see that we already have a good number of people sitting here on Zoom. Even if you're sitting on LinkedIn or YouTube, welcome to the event. And feel free to drop a hello in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. We would love to see how far we're reaching today. I'd like to let everyone know really quickly that we have an exciting Q&A session planned at the very end where our experts will address all of your questions. So please submit your questions throughout the discussion using the Q&A options on your screen at any point. If anything sparks curiosity, just drop a question. And for the folks on LinkedIn and YouTube, you can drop your questions in the chat and our team will collect them and we'll address as many as possible. Now, here's a truth that might sting a little to some people. Automation won't replace you, but ignoring the human connection will. Today, we're surrounded by AI tools, automation platforms, sophisticated algorithms that are making hiring so much more faster and efficient. But here's what we're learning. The human element isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential. And I think all of our panelists here would agree. So today we have three incredible industry veterans who have navigated this evolution firsthand. They've seen the rise of technology, experienced layoffs, adapted to new tools, and most importantly, they've never lost sight of what makes recruitment truly great, genuine human connection. So together, they're trusted by over 100,000 professionals worldwide. And today they're going to pull back the curtain on their most effective strategies for keeping the human experience alive in modern recruiting. And don't go anywhere before we wrap up. We have some incredible giveaways at the end that you would not want to miss out on. So if you stick till the end, you'll have a chance to win. Okay, now let's meet our incredible panel for today. First, we have Mikey Weil, a senior strategic sourcer at Boston Children's Hospital with 12 years of talent acquisition experience across healthcare, tech, and Fortune 500 companies. Mikey is recognized as an experienced speaker at major events like Sourcing Summit and SourceCon, and has established expertise in both technical sourcing and human connection. Next, we have David Marr. David is a veteran talent sourcing and recruiting strategist with over 10 years of experience across Big Four consulting agency and corporate environments. He's known for his expertise in diversity recruiting and social media sourcing. And finally, we have Sharon Reed. Sharon is a career strategist and consultant with 15 years in career strategy consulting and 12 years in recruiting. She has recruited for startups to Fortune 500 companies, filling roles from entry-level to C-suite across industries like pharmaceuticals, AI, healthcare, and fintech industries. So what makes this panel truly special is that all three of our speakers have experienced the modern recruiting landscape from multiple angles. They've been practitioners, they've been job seekers, and they have navigated the challenges of layoffs and career transitions as well. So yeah, all right, with that, let's dive into our session today. Do you guys want to say a quick hi before we start with the very first question?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is going to be a fun event today, and I'm excited to get started.
All right, awesome. Well, let's start with the elephant in the room. We're living in an age where AI can write job descriptions, screen resumes, even conduct initial candidate conversations. David, let's start with you. David, you mentioned that you've been doing this for over a decade and have seen massive changes happening over the past few years. What's your take on this evolution? Are we losing our humanity in recruitment, or are we just adapting?
I think that AI is a fascinating technology that has technically been around for a while, but we haven't seen it in its current form. And if you see how rapidly it's evolving and it's getting a lot more sophisticated over a very brief period of time, and I think it's very exciting. I do think that it's going to empower talent acquisition in many other industries and allow us to be a lot more efficient. But I don't see it as being there's a lot of headlines you might see that claim that AI is going to take recruiting's jobs and people's jobs, and I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I think it's going to be a tool that's going to be basically a force multiplier, because it's going to allow individuals that learn how to leverage the technology to be that much more efficient and effective. So the way I do see it playing out in the industries is that it might make companies that used to have teams of, let's say 20, now can maybe do it with a team of 5 or 10, right? Where an individual will be able to do that much more themselves with the assistance of AI technologies.
All right. Thank you, David. Does anybody else have anything to say on that?
I think he covered that. Yeah.
All right, awesome.
I
Sharon,
would just say
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
just in terms like the evolution, I would just say, it's such a new thing, AI. It's happened I mean, yeah, it's been around for a while, but kind of this new big boost in it and strength in it with everything has happened so fast and a lot of things are changing. But I would say, it's still very early on. There's still a lot of issues and a lot of kinks within, the program. So like for me, the Nintendo Switch 2 just came out. I really want it, but I'm not going to get it for like a year because you have to wait for all the other people to use it, find out all the problems, and then report it. So it's still very early on into AI. You still have to be hesitant of it. You still have to make sure that it is working and that you're getting the right results from it. So, I think it's still a great thing to use, but just make sure you're still double checking things, using the human side of it, and just really, doing the due diligence of making sure it's working for you and working properly.
All right, I love that, Mikey and David. Sharon, my next question is for you. You work with candidates from entry level to C-suite, all the levels. How do you see this playing out from the candidate experience side? And my next question for you, just along with this would be, and what are job seekers telling you about their interaction with recruiters today?
Yeah, I've seen a mix of experiences with a lot of the job seekers out here. Some job seekers are saying, they're making it to multiple rounds of interviews, they're getting ghosted, they're not hearing back, they're falling off. And for them, it's frustrating and confusing, especially if you're going through multiple rounds. Whereas on the other hand, I do hear from experiences where it's great, but they're taking accountability where they're feeling like, okay, maybe I didn't come across and demonstrate how I can showcase my skills, or I couldn't bring to the table what it is, how I can impact the organization. Or where there's others where they go through the process, the job is great, but then the salary and benefits aren't there. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there where a lot of candidates are feeling that, okay, their resumes aren't getting through to a human being, and that or ATS is kicking it out, they're not being seen. And then I'm, changing that narrative and saying, well, no, that's misinformation. A human being actually does review your resume because, it's just how they set it up in the system, whether there's knockout questions and if you're not meeting those knockout questions. And so I think there's that mix with the evolution now with this AI, it's that misinformation is speaking louder. And so a lot of these candidates are feeling that, okay, now this is going to be much harder for me to even compete or get through the system, because now with AI, it means that now I'm probably not ever going to be seen throughout and make it through the process, where that's not necessarily true. And so that's what I've been seeing so far when I'm talking with different candidates, or just kind of having those discussions and seeing what's being said out there.
All right, awesome. Mikey, David, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Their candidates are saying that to comment off or to confirm what Sharon said about feeling frustrated, that in some cases they feel like they're not being seen, or that they're being passed over for because of AI. And I think that their AI is being used in different aspects to help assist with reviewing large quantities of applications. There's a lot of very talented individuals on the market right now, and recruiting teams are a lot leaner than they were in recently past years due to massive layoffs, thinning of TA orgs. So you have kind of a combination or a culmination of like the weird dynamics where you have smaller TA teams that are reviewing larger numbers of applicants for smaller amounts of roles in some cases. So you have a frustrating time because people feel like they're not getting seen. So I think candidates need to learn how to use AI just as well as everybody should learn how to use AI, because it's not a technology that's going away, right? And it's important, I think, to learn how to use it to accomplish what your objectives are, and help make you more successful in your goals. So
It's funny too because you see articles every day about AI changing things for job seekers and for recruiters, and a lot of the times you see a company complaining that a job seeker used AI in their interviews or to touch up their resume, and then you see job seekers are complaining that recruiters and companies are using AI. So we're both using AI. It's well knowledge that we're both using it. We just have to make sure we're using it for the right advantages and that we're using it to strengthen things and still being honest with ourselves and with companies and candidates. But that's the thing, everybody's using it. We can't really shy away from it. We can't say job seekers can't use it, but recruiters are going to, or vice versa. So both sides are using it. I think we just have to be open to that and make sure that we're using it in the right ways as job seekers and recruiters.
Thank you, guys. Mikey, my next question is actually for you. So you have extensive experience as both a practitioner and someone who's navigated the job market yourself. How does having that dual perspective influence your approach to candidate interactions and staying human in your sourcing work?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a very interesting background. I mean, the last 5 years, I've suffered 2 or 3 layoffs. I had a contract that I was in that ended back at the beginning of this year, and that's how I found my way into my new full-time role. So, whether it's been an economical kind of layoff where I've had to bounce back quickly, or I knew a role was coming to an end, I found myself as a job seeker quite a lot throughout my experience, and that's one thing I love doing on the side. I mean, I help people find jobs for my own company, but on the side, I also just love to help any job seekers land a role because I know how hard it is from both sides. And I also know as a job seeker how to get into a company and how to get the recruiters and team to see you. But for me, I mean, last year when I was out of work, I think I applied to or I was in work, but looking, for when my contract was ending, I applied to about 160 roles throughout last year, which isn't a lot. I was employed. I was applying to just ones that kind of made sense. And I only heard back from about half of those. So I still haven't heard back from half of those companies. I didn't have a lot of people reaching out to say, hey, I didn't see this on your resume, but can we hop on a call? But for me, it's really taking that devil's advocate and kind of both perspectives. Is we've talked about layoffs here. What we're seeing is companies are laying off half their recruiters, and then you have a few recruiters left who are now taking on everybody else's workload, new hiring managers, new roles they've never worked on, new all these things. So it is hard for us to get back to everybody. It is hard for us to reach out to everybody and give them a personable kind of thing. But for me, how I kind of stay human in it is, as a sourcer, I do initial outreach, lead gen, I do phone screens, and then get people to apply. I have a very manual tracker. It's the same one I've used for like all 12 years of my job. I mean, so for me, I have names of every single person that I screened, when I screened them, if I followed up, the day that I sent them to the recruiters. So I'm always doing that. When I meet weekly with the recruiters, I'm following up to see, hey, I haven't heard back, or are we going to move forward with this person? I need to let them know. So with that manual tracker and being able to cross things off and things like that, that makes me feel more accomplished and helps me keep track of those people. And for me, it's really just about the art of the follow-up, art of keeping people engaged. If somebody's not a fit, sending them a link to all of your other roles, letting them know, hey, if you see another role, let me know, and I'll find out who's responsible for that. Because a lot of people think that when they get rejected for one role at a company, that company doesn't want them. But there could be 10 other roles that they're a great fit for. So for me, I'm always encouraging people to explore our other roles, apply to any that makes sense, apply to more than one if you're a fit and interested and excited about that. And, hiring managers go on vacation, recruiters go on vacation. Holidays are really hard to keep in touch with people. So if you're not giving them that next or final step within a couple days, keeping them engaged and just a quick LinkedIn message, quick email, hey, we're still considering people. You're still in the running. No news is good news. You're not rejected. You would have known if we weren't moving forward. So it's those kind of, quick updates throughout to keep it human, to keep them engaged. And really on that first kind of call or first time you talk to that candidate, find out what their best method of contact is. Do they check their emails? Do they check their email, text the most? Are they on LinkedIn as much as you are? And if so, make sure that that's the route that you're using to keep in touch with people, keep them engaged, keep them warm, and just make sure, they know what's going on with the process.
All right.
And
Yeah.
to comment really quick off of what Mikey said, if if job seekers are, if you're interested in working for a company, I think some things that you can do very easily is to follow the company on LinkedIn, to, engage, sign up for the talent communities that companies have. And sometimes, a lot of times by applying to a position or multiple positions at a company, you're letting that company know that you're interested in working there. And talent acquisition teams, their internal applicant tracking system is one of their most utilized places that they find candidates from first before they go out and look for new ones, right? Because they know that the people that have applied to those jobs are interested in working for that company. So I know Sharon, Mikey, you will all probably agree with me that a lot of times you find a candidate that maybe applies to one position, but they're actually a much better fit for other positions that you're hiring for either right at that exact moment or in the near future. And I've seen it and been able to place people that way. So don't be discouraged. It is frustrating to get rejected, but just know that if you be professional and be persistent and, make connections with the recruiters that work at companies, check in with them periodically. There's recruiters right now are overwhelmed. So if you're not getting real-time feedback or the type of responses that you're accustomed to, just, know that and, give grace and just know that they're trying to find the right matches for the roles that they currently have open so they can work on what's coming down next in process. But
And I think it's really about the sourcers and recruiters and how strong they are with that low-hanging fruit. Sourcers, in my opinion, should be sitting in the CRM. And if somebody gets rejected or was rejected 6 months ago, find out what else they're a fit for. Recruiters sitting in the ATS, when a role closes, find out where else you can put them into another similar role, whether it's the exact same role with a different rec number or maybe a more senior level or a little bit lower. I mean, there's so much low-hanging fruit in there. And like I said, the biggest thing is people don't hear back from a company and go, oh, they hate me. They don't want me. But they might have applied right after a decision was made. They could have been a great fit. They could have been as good as the person getting an offer. But the thing is now they're that low-hanging fruit. You got to keep those people warm for when that next rec opens, because all of those people who applied after decision was made or maybe didn't get to first call yet, all of those people should be re-engaged. So it's really about how the sources and recruiters are working within their own internal systems and keeping those, people. In my vision, I think this is a blog post I want to write. Every company should have one person who is so trained in the ATS, like the back of their hand, that their whole job is just taking people from closed recs and moving them around to other recs and following up and emailing and encouraging them to apply. Because it's hard for sources and recruiters to do that. It can't be our whole job. It can't be our whole thing. But if a company had somebody dedicated to that, you'd have a lot of quicker time to fill with that.
Well, I love that, David and Mikey. We're already getting some good insights from all of you, and we're only in the first section, of our event today. So okay, now let's get tactical. I want to hear specific strategies that each of you use to maintain that human connection. So Sharon, let's start with you. You've worked across agency, RPO, and in-house environments. What's one daily practice you swear by to keep things personal and authentic?
So for me, I'm the type of person, like if I don't write it down, I will forget. So like Mikey had mentioned about the manual tracker, I have one too. Like when I was doing sourcing, I did the same thing. Like any candidate I sourced, they were all on that tracker so that I knew when I spoke to them, if they're moving in the process. I literally will, I'm not kidding, when I partner with the recruiter, I will follow the candidates with every single step that they're at, and follow through. So follow through is super important to me. So even if I'm on a phone with a candidate, and I know that I have to circle back, I will even tell the candidate, like, well, hang on for a second. Let me put this into the calendar so that I don't forget, because I'm that type of person. If I don't write it down or if I don't put it in the calendar, I will. And so for me, like the candidate experience is so, so important to me. And naturally, I'm a people person and I love people. And so I don't know, like everyone has their own story. There's things that's going on with people we don't know. So I always like to lead with kindness. And so when I'm doing my daily routine, I make sure that I'm time blocking. So if I know, like, before I start my day, the first thing I'm doing is making sure I'm checking my email, looking at my tracker. If there's someone that needs to be followed up with that hasn't been, or maybe they sat in a status for way longer than they needed to, I will follow up with that recruiter, find out what's going on, and then I circle back with that candidate. So for me, what's helpful is being able to have that tracker, being able to look at it. And then I use the ATS system, obviously, to see where they are in that process. And candidates will tell me all this, like, oh my gosh, I'm not used to this much transparency and you're following up that much. And I'm like, yeah, like because if I was looking, I would want someone to let me know. If it's been a week and a half, and I haven't heard anything, I would want to know what's going on. And there's a lot of times where I would see some of my source candidates that haven't been followed up with. And so for me personally, I feel like by being able to have that tracker, I can keep track of that. Not to say that a candidate doesn't fall through the cracks, because that happens. But when that happens, I take accountability for that. And I don't avoid it and saying, well, it's been too long. No, I will still follow up with them. And usually that would be a call, where I would call them versus emailing them. And I would like just get on the phone and let them know kind of like what happened or so forth. But for me, I just feel like it's really important what follow through. And that's where that's where you keep that good candidate experience. And I think a lot of people, that's where they kind of fall off, is when it comes to the follow through. And so for me, being able to have that tracker helps with that.
All right, thank you, Sharon. So, you just mentioned about, candidates being ghosted, and even Mikey, you recently mentioned, like, you applied to 160 jobs and you still haven't heard back from half of them. So getting ghosted is a very common problem for candidates as well. So what's your system for keeping candidates engaged and informed, especially when you're managing a high volume?
Yeah, so the tracker is the best thing. I read a few years ago that crossing things off makes you feel more completed and like you've done more stuff. So for me, I have a daily tracker every day where I cross off, the recs that I've worked on. I will put on that daily task, make sure to follow up with this person you screened yesterday, and make sure to follow up with this person. So for that, it's, once I follow up with them, then I can cross that off and know that I've done that. But it's that bullet point that's sitting there throughout the day. If it's not today, it's carried over to the next day. That's, hey, you screen these 3 people, follow up with them, whether it's a yes or a no, and find out what it is. So I do that. The tracker is such a good way to do it. If you open up a LinkedIn email message, or even a regular message on LinkedIn from somebody saying, hey, I haven't heard back. If you open that up, go back in and say mark as unread, because if you can't come back to that right now, put it as unread, so later on you still have that notification to go in and follow up with them. If you open it and mark it as read, it can get lost in everything else. So putting that on there is a really important thing to do. Same with your emails. If somebody follows up via email, make sure you flag it and say, all right, I want to flag this and make sure I get back in the next day or two. And then, for me, I think those are all the manual ways I do it. But then there's also some kind of ownership that I also put on the recruiters and the job seekers. So for example, at the end of every week, I'll send a recruiter that tracker that I have that says, hey, Sharon applied on August 6th. She's been applied for the last 12 days. Are we moving forward with her? Why has she not been moved? Does she need to be rejected? We need to do something. If there's somebody else moving forward, Sharon needs to know about it. We need to figure that out, because that's somebody who's been sitting in there. So putting that on the recruiters. I'm not a big fan of this, but if recruiters are not turning around quickly, letting their managers know, like, hey, we're not moving people quickly enough. As a sourcer, I get people in the door, and then it's the recruiters who need to kind of move them forward through there. But for me, I say it's on the recruiters to make sure they're moving people through the steps and doing that. And they have their own SLAs, of course. And then for job seekers too, what I say to them all the time is, I'm a sourcer. I'm going to have you apply. I'm going to introduce you to my colleague. I'm hands off through them, but don't hesitate to reach out through me through the whole process. Text me, email me, whatever you need to do. If you're not hearing back from the recruiter in the next 2 to 3 days, please let me know. Send me a follow-up. So telling the candidate that, please keep me engaged, keep me updated with what's going on. That's an important thing too. So as a job seeker, I'd say, if the recruiter, the sourcer you talked with, you have their contact info, make sure you just send them a ping and just remind them, hey, I haven't heard back from you. Am I still in process? Is there anything else that I can do? So yeah, I think, we all kind of have our own kind of ownership for how to kind of follow up and stay engaged.
All right, Mikey, I have like a follow-up question for you. So, we've talked about some manual ways of, managing this, but in terms of high volume, what do you think the role of AI can, play in this? Like, what role do you think AI can play here in terms of, let's say, automated follow-ups or data organization, especially when you're handling like a huge chunk of candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on high volume a lot throughout my career. That's a very steady thing I've worked on through manufacturing and things like that. So, I
Mhm.
mean, with AI, I would say, I mean, this is what a lot of people in sourcing and recruiting are saying, and it's true, is like AI is not going to replace us, but it can replace kind of the menial tasks that we need to do. So have AI help you out with, reminders. Like Sharon said, you have the calendar reminders when to follow up with people. Use AI also to help remind you of who to follow up with, how to follow up with people, and when. I use AI to, tell me about a new role that I've never heard of and how to keep me engaged in it. So with that, I could say, hey, remember we worked on this similar role and I sent you this candidate to give me a breakdown on, would they be a fit for our other roles? Or you can use AI to literally take all of your open roles, copy a screenshot and send it to them and say, here are all of our open roles. I'm only working on 10 or 11. Are any of my people a good fit for these other roles? And they can kind of say, oh, this other role could be good. And then you find the recruiter, you get them introduced and things like that. But for me, yeah, I would say the biggest thing is using AI for those kind of menial tasks of breaking things down, doing the follow-ups. You can automate things on LinkedIn. Every tool, every Chrome extension, everything is implementing AI in one way or another. I think the biggest thing is, try not to use it for your initial outreaches. That's the big thing. But, for your follow-ups on Indeed, for your follow-ups on LinkedIn, AI can write a quick little, thing to say, hey, I haven't heard back from you. Here's the job description. So you can use it for that. And yeah, I would just say kind of just keep engaged in what kind of new tools are out there to kind of help you, like as an administrative assistant. What can be kind of your right hand man tool to kind of help you with those things.
Thanks, Mikey. David, my next question's for you. You're consulting with multiple clients at the moment, which means you're seeing different approaches across various organizations. What's the most effective way you've seen companies use technology to enhance and like not replace human connection? And where should recruiters be letting AI handle the work versus doing it themselves?
So I think AI is great, or approaches. So let me think about this. So different industries operate differently. I think when it all comes down to it, recruiting is about people, and when I say recruiting, I'm using that term broadly to mean talent acquisition, whether you're a sourcer, a recruiter, or someone that is involved in that process. There's also recruiting coordinators, right? We're all working with people, and a lot of times we're the first point of contact that candidates or job seekers have to the companies that they're interested in or that we are working for. So I think it's important to remember that there's a human behind, but that you're talking to a human dealing with humans. So the best approaches I've seen is where AI is used as a way to help make better matches, help with better communications, help simplify things that might be complex and might take a long time if you were to do it manually. But I do think there's a difference between AI and automation. I think that AI and automation together can be very powerful and help speed things up a little bit. So I think that one of the ways that that can work well is by sending status updates from the applicant tracking system. So as long as recruiters and sourcers and TA members are moving candidates through the stages of the hiring workflows in a timely manner and getting updates, it'll be able to communicate that and automate those messaging to candidates. I always try to keep people that I have engaged with throughout the process up to date of where they stand, right? And it's similar to like what Mikey said. I wear a sourcing hat a lot of times where I'm not working directly with the hiring managers. I'm working with a recruiting partner. Some people may not know what a sourcer is, but sourcers are basically we work as an extension of recruiters, right? Recruiters typically work on work the whole process, right? Sourcing through working with hiring managers, and they own that whole process. Sourcing is basically what's called top of funnel, which is going out and finding people that match jobs that we're hiring for, right? So sourcers are kind of like the initial points of contact that a lot of people find. So you may get emails from sourcers that are contacting you because your background aligns with jobs that their company's hiring for, right? And then when you express interest, you may talk with a sourcer in some companies, or that sourcer may introduce you directly to the recruiter, and then help you get into the process. So through those processes, AI can help, in a lot of ways to make the communications much more personable. So that way they're really tailored to the individual, right? I'm sure we've all gotten, whether you're a recruiter or you're a job seeker or you do something else, we've all gotten emails that are about jobs that are just so poorly written that that nobody took time to actually understand what you do. And you probably have been contacted about a job that you're not even qualified for. And it clearly shows that whoever messaged you didn't take the time to understand what you do, right? So that's not a personable human element of the process. So I think that by using AI to make sure that you understand the people you're reaching out to, their backgrounds, and that you're personalizing the messaging that you're using, right? As Mikey said, AI is a great starting place, but it shouldn't be you shouldn't send out what is generated verbatim, right? Because it's just a starting place. It's there to assist you, to make you more efficient and be able to design very personalized messages faster, right? But it still should be a reflection of you as a TA person's personality, how you talk, how you communicate, and so forth. So I think that's a good way to do that, and how companies can do it. I think every industry is a little bit different. Some industries are more regulated than others. So in certain industries, there's a lot more approval processes and steps that have to get completed before things can move slowly. So I think that AI can really assist with some of that approvals and automation part that can take a long time, especially if you're waiting for individuals to sign off on things into like layers of approval in different companies, like banking, healthcare, financial services, et cetera, government contracting. So AI can help make that go faster. I think that technology in general, if technology is used in conjunction with AI in your workflows, you can really streamline that to have a very efficient process. But at the end of the day, when you get down to the basics, we're humans, right? And if we say we're going to do something, we should do that. And it's not always feasibly possible. And I don't want to, apologize or justify, bad experiences, but everybody makes mistakes and people are learning and people have various levels of experience. So, and sometimes their hands are tied, or they have, they might be the only recruiter at a company and they have every job the company's hiring for. So if they don't get people that the hiring managers are interested into the processes, they won't fill any roles and nobody will hear from anybody. So recruiters are working, or talent acquisition is basically working on behalf of the hiring managers who ultimately decide who they hire, who they move forward with, who they don't. We try to act as advocates for the candidates that we're working with. And I know that Mikey does it. I've worked with him personally, and I know Mikey's worked with Sharon personally. And we genuinely care and want people to get through the process. It's very frustrating a lot of times. I know for me personally, where people that I thought were like perfect fits don't end up getting selected. And it's so devastating, especially if you source the person and you know how much hard work they put in for that role. But one of the best privileges that I get to have, that I look forward to as a recruiter or sourcer, is when I find someone that is somewhere and they don't even realize how talented they are, and they're like in a place that maybe doesn't recognize them or give them the type of compensation that they should be making. And in this case, when I'm able to help them get hired into that role and their whole life trajectory changes, it's amazing. And there's no monetary reward that is equal for that. So that's what I would say off the top of my head right now. But I think the human connection, again, is the most important part. And that's where, we can't let AI, you can't automate everything. And if people that think that recruiting is all AI, it's not. There's always, every time you get a rejection notice, it's typically done through a human reviewing it first, right? And some companies I've worked for, the recruiters make those decisions. Sometimes it's the hiring manager. But ultimately, a human is making those decisions beforehand. There's a lot of things that do happen that you may not have thought about before. Sometimes jobs are posted and there's an internal person that's going to be promoted into that role, but that job has to be posted for legal reasons for a certain number of time before they can extend that offer to that person. So that's something I would say. Another thing that happens is contractors that work at companies get converted into full-time employees, right? Or internally people get promoted. So there's a lot of things that happen, and it doesn't mean that you're not qualified or that you wouldn't have gotten that job if that person wasn't there or whatever. So don't assume that you're not qualified. Don't take it personal. It's not a personal scenario. There's a lot of factors and variables. Sometimes jobs get put on hold. I've had a situation when I was a job seeker. I had a job offer and on a Friday, and then Monday came around and they had to rescind the job offer because the company was going through some financial situation, and they had to basically cancel all the jobs they had. So a lot of things happen, and it's not personal. Ultimately, people in recruiting, I do think, genuinely are people and want to give you the best experience possible. And I think that recruiting should try to hold themselves to a higher standard, if at all possible, to give the best experience for the people that we're interacting with. But if you've never heard from someone in recruiting, just know that sometimes there's a lot of candidates that have applied, and you maybe applied a little too late, or you didn't have the strongest experience for what the hiring manager was looking for. That's what I've seen a lot of times happen.
I couldn't agree more, David. The smartest approach I've seen is using AI for things like data management, like you mentioned, personalization, administrative tasks, and platforms like Recruit CRM are great for this, while keeping all candidate-facing interactions genuinely human. Okay, now let me throw out a scenario to all of you. A candidate has been in your process for 3 weeks. They've done multiple interviews, and suddenly the hiring manager says the role is on hold indefinitely. Sharon, how do you handle this conversation while maintaining trust and keeping the door open?
Yeah, so for me personally, I like to be transparent with the candidates that I source, because obviously the candidates I source are the ones that I have the relationship with and the ones I communicate with the most. And there are times where obviously, there's times where you can't say different things because of legal issues. But when it comes to a role being closed indefinitely, like there are signs, like for me personally, because I've experienced it before when I've worked in roles and we had to close it. So I like to keep my candidates informed throughout the process and where they are. So if it feels like it may close or it may not, I do give them like that heads up. I do personally, like I'll let them know, like, I know that you're really excited about this role. There is a possibility that it could go on hold, and there is a possibility that it might not. And so that way they're not trying to pull themselves out of the process, and then it doesn't. And then if it does happen, so that when it does happen, or if it does happen, which it did with my candidate, of course they were bummed, and it was an opportunity where they really wanted it. But because I was transparent with them, and because I stayed communicative with them throughout the process, it didn't hurt as much, or they weren't as angry as they would have been had I just kept making it seem like they're moving through, this is a great opportunity, and giving them that false hope. And so when that happens, I also do, in conjunction with that, I let them know that I am still making sure I'm looking at if there's any upcoming roles or what's going on in other departments, because a lot of the companies I'm with, they're global, which means that they have opportunities in different areas, they have opportunities in different locations. And I always ask candidates that question too, like, are you open up just locally? Do you want to stay local? Are you open to relocation opportunities and stuff like that? So that if something like that happens, at least they know that I'm keeping an eye out for openings in other places. I know that for recruiters, typically they only get access to their roles that are assigned to them. But being a sourcer, I actually have eyes on all of the roles, because I'm partnering with multiple recruiters in multiple areas. And because of that, I have that insight. So for me, I like to be transparent with the candidate. We did have roles like that where they did close automatically, like when people were in the last stages of interviewing, and it was unfortunate. But at least like with my candidates, they weren't caught off guard, and they didn't feel like, this came out of nowhere. I know others might not be able to be as transparent, but I like to give them that heads up just so that they know. And then there's times where it doesn't close and it works out, but at least they have that kind of heads up before it does.
All right. Mikey, how would you handle the situation?
Yeah, so definitely in the chat, somebody's talking about how caring and all of that and emotionally attached can be tough. And yeah, you root for a candidate all the way through the process. That happens. Super unfortunate. So at that point, there's just so many things that you can do. I mean, you can just tell them, hey, the role closed. Sorry, but that's the worst thing you can do. What you want to do is you want to let them know, hey, the role's on hold right now. You'll hear back from me if it does open up. You'll be one of the first people. That's why when I screen people too, I'll tell them, hey, these screens are good because it gets you in the system. We have all your notes. When another role opens, we're going to have all that ready to go. Once you've applied to one job, when another one opens, super quick and easy to apply to. But for me, it's really that due diligence is even though, as sourcers, we can see kind of all of the roles, we don't know what all of them are all about. We don't know what's coming up. So you got to do that kind of internal research. So if a role closes for a, I don't know, Java developer, I don't have a lot of tech experience. I don't know why I'm saying that. If a role closes for that, you're reaching out to, the other sourcers on teams and saying, hey guys, my Java role closed. Does anybody have one? I got this person, they have this kind of background, they're looking for a senior role, they're open to on-site. Who else has something? And I mean, sharing things between your team and your company is the most important thing you can do. A lot of people don't do it because they don't have the time or, they don't see the kind of reciprocation, which is tough. But being, in touch with the sourcers, the recruiters, the hiring managers, and asking them, hey, do you know of anybody who just put their 2 weeks in, any internal movement that's going to open some other roles in the near future? I have this person, they're great. I want to get them in the door. So for me, I'm always trying to find another role for them. I'm trying to find another role for them to apply to internally. That's the first step I can do. I'm also giving them the link to our careers page to say, hey, when you get a sec, I also want you to explore all of our roles because you might see something you're interested in that I'm not seeing. But then also what I want you to do is join our talent community. Because I tell people, I can't let you know as soon as a new role opens. I don't know about all of our roles here. But when you join our talent community, that's the best way to get an email as soon as a new role opens. And then I'll say, hey, when you do see a new role in the future opens, let me know. Let me know so I can let the recruiter know, hey, before you just look at their resume, I have their screen notes. I have this. I know what they're looking for. So it's really about finding them another role. I worked for a company once where they had two locations very close to each other. And when one plant or, would close or have like a role close, I wanted the two locations to communicate more with each other because especially when you have, companies that have offices like me. I mean, Boston Children's, we have like 7 or 8 hospital locations all within Massachusetts. So when one role closes somewhere else, it's like, all right, how can we find another location that's close by to get them in the door to? So do your research, talk internally to sources and recruiters, see what else other people have open up that sourcing tracker that shows other people's roles and things like that. Talk to hiring managers to see what they might know that might be opening, in a couple weeks. But really, it's just keeping updated with them. Send them a LinkedIn request, have them send you one so they'll see when you're posting new roles in the future and they can apply to them that way as well. And yeah, it's about, like Sharon said too, you just want to keep them engaged throughout the whole point, not get their hopes up too much, let them know they're in process when they're in process, let them know there's other people that are interviewing too, and you'll hear back soon. So really, that's the biggest thing you can do is just internal research, find other roles, give them the right links to keep updated with, and let them know that you're here, when anything opens up in the near future to go at bat for them and fight for them to get in quickly for that new role.
Awesome. David, do you have any thoughts on this really quickly?
I think it's a two-way street. And what I mean by that is, so job seekers should find folks whenever you're interested in a company and you've done your research, you should research companies you want to work for and have target company lists. But when you have those companies you want to work for, you'll make contacts, either maybe former colleagues, people you've met through networking, recruiters, etc., and have established relationships with them. So on the talent acquisition side, so what I can do, what Mike can do, etc. When we first have conversations with somebody, what I always try to do is understand what someone's background is, what their motivations are beyond just a profile or a resume. and really understand what they're looking for, kind of the areas that they want to do. Like, what is your career path? Like, what motivates them? And try to incorporate that into what we have in our system about their background, but then also know that personally. So in my own personal like area I'm working on, sometimes people move around though, but in general, so I can represent and be an advocate for them within the company I work for. And then also introduce them to hiring managers and just be proactive on their behalf, to try to build bridges and make connections for them internally. Sometimes you have the opportunity to, I want to say, cross collaborate, like someone's has a background which maybe is applicable for marketing and sales, or IT and engineering or whatever, and you're able to place these people in two different areas. I always try to think, where do they best fit, where could they potentially fit, and have like maybe 3 to 4 areas that I could, or teams at least internally identified, that I can share their background with, proactively, but also look at what's currently open. But then on the flip side, I think candidates should also continue to network and also to review. And then if they do see something, that's where you would reach out to, a sourcer or recruiter contact that you have. But also companies have employee referral programs too. So another approach you can try, if you haven't done this, is reaching out to someone and have them refer you into a job. A lot of companies will, especially if it's a former colleague or former boss or whatnot that works somewhere that knows your background, specifically how you work. If they refer you in, then that's going to hold a lot more merit. Because I know in a lot of companies I've worked for, there's a referral, like we're far in the interviewing process, and then there's a referral that magically comes through the whole process that we have to stop everything for, talk to that candidate. And they may or may not be qualified for the role, but let's say it ends up through a vice president or something. And this has happened a few times where it's somebody's neighbor's, I don't know, relative or something that gets referred in and through the VP. And because it comes from the VP, you're talking to that person, right? Because you want to make sure everything has a positive candidate experience. And since it was referred directly to the VP, you're talking to this person. So it's another strategy that job seekers can try to, again, get yourself in front of those folks. So just be aware of that. And, there's many different approaches. And I think you should try a lot of different things as job seekers. But from a recruiting perspective, yeah, I think being proactive, joining talent communities, setting up Google alerts on companies, and everything you can do, checking in on a regular basis, not every day, not every week, maybe once a month, once every 3 months, something like that, I think is fair. And like, if you are, let's say, working right now, but like you got notice that, yeah, in 3 months, our team or company is going to be, downsizing. Don't wait, get the word out about your situation, reach out to your recruiting contacts. I would have a list, whatever you do, I would have a list of recruiters that place what you do, that you have like set up, that you can always reach out to on a moment's notice. If you start to look, or there's a reason you start looking for a job, that way you can get the word out about your scenario in advance. So I'm going to cut it off though, because I feel like I'm going long-winded. So
And the biggest thing with referrals too is, job seekers think that anybody can be a referral. So I'm always encouraging them, make sure it's somebody that you went to school with, somebody that you worked with in the past in some capacity that can vouch for you. That's the biggest thing. Because I'll have people tell me they're applying to a role and they'll ask me, can I get a referral from you? And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. So I mean, like, I wouldn't want to go to bat and get you in the door and then you don't show up the first day of work. So I'm always giving people those tools of how to look on LinkedIn for people at your desired company who used to work at your old company or used to go to your college. And that's also a big thing for the hiring manager too. If the hiring manager sees that a new applicant went to the same school or came from the same company as somebody else in their team, they're like, hey, we know that company or school has readied them for this kind of role. So also as a sourcer, that's just a good perspective too. Look at where your hiring manager came from, look at where their team has come from, and try to mirror and mimic companies and schools like that, because that's a good way also to get your applicants quickly in the door.
All right. right, thank you guys. We only have about 10 to 15 minutes, so we're going to have to like speed up through the last section of the event. And for all of the attendees, I think now is the time. If you have any questions, you can keep dropping them and we'll pick them up as soon as the Q&A round begins. All right, so looking ahead, I'm curious about your predictions and hopes for where this industry is going. So David, you have a very broad perspective from working with different organizations. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for recruiters who want to differentiate themselves through human connection?
I would say that recruiters who take time to actually know their candidates and really, I would recommend that recruiters focus, like specialize in certain areas versus being a generalist, because it's going to allow you to have more breadth and depth and intimate knowledge of the candidates that you are working with. And that's going to add a lot of value to not only the candidates you're working with, but also the hiring managers or clients that you're working with. I know, for example, construction industry right now is a big opportunity for recruiters. So if you are a recruiter who is in the job, who is a job seeker, you might want to consider maybe consulting or starting a business or something that focuses on the construction industry, because there's a huge shortage of tradespeople right now. For every 100 tradespeople that are retiring, only 7 new people are going into it. And that's the backbone and cornerstone of how all the infrastructure in the US and abroad is built and whatnot. So again, specialization and having that personalization and breadth of expertise in that space, I think, is key.
All right, awesome. Thank you, David. Sharon, my next question is for you. What skills or mindsets do you think recruiters need to develop to stay relevant and valuable in this, rapidly changing landscape?
Yeah, I'd say like continue to stay curious. Don't, obviously AI is not going to be your replacement. So I'd say like, evolve with it, leverage it where you can, make sure you continue to keep that human aspect. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, candidates just want to be seen and respected. So when you can do that, again, like how David said, you just learn who your candidates are and keep that human piece. I think that will take them a long way. So that mindset, don't think of it as, well, AI is the enemy. It's going to replace me. I'm seeing all of this out here where, of course, our industry is getting hit one of the hardest, and a lot of layoffs are happening. But at the end of the day, like, we are the ones that make those human connections, and we can make those human connections. Yes, AI can help things move faster. It can help you leverage and do things at speedily than what we did back in the day. But at the same time, we are still human beings, and people are still seeking that human connection. So keep that mindset of, yes, it's evolving. Yes, it's not going anywhere. But at the end of the day, people still want that human connection, and we are in the people business. And so just know that just be open to it, but at the same time, just know that you bring the human to humans. So, and that's what I'd say.
Awesome. And I have a question for all of you. If you could give one piece of advice to a recruiter who's feeling overwhelmed by all the new AI tools and automation options out there, what would it be? So Mikey, we can start with you.
I would say take time to explore new things, tools, basically what David just said, what David just said in the chat. No, I saw that come through and I'm like, yeah, that's the best thing. Just copy and paste that and put that on your thing, make it sticky, No, there's so many things that are out there right now for AI tools. Every day on LinkedIn, I'm getting messages. We're the new AI CRM, or we're the new AI response rate, or this or that. So it's really about, doing your research. That's what our jobs are. Find out what tools are right for you and which ones are good, demoing them, asking, a newer tool, hey, how can we use you for free for a couple of days at our company? Because a lot of companies don't have the big budgets and the big this and that. So seeing how you can kind of, try out a tool first and then report it back to your manager is a big one. The big things are doing your research with your community. There's a couple great Facebook groups for sourcers and recruiters, and to reach out into those groups and say, hey, I'm thinking about trying this new AI tool for making outreach templates. Has anybody used this? And if so, what was your success? So talk to the people, like David was saying earlier, make sure you're networking with other recruiters for when jobs come up. But that's also just a good reason just to network with recruiters. I mean, just David and I talk every month on the phone and just kind of catch up on things. And then, if one of us have an opportunity that we've we've heard about for somebody else, we can pass it along or whatever, or we can talk about tools and we can talk about things like that. So do make sure that when you're networking with other recruiters and sourcers, it's not just, hey, what do you have? What jobs do you have for me? Can you get me in the door of your company? Make those relationships, because it's also good for things like this. Start a chat with people on LinkedIn and say, hey, who's used this tool? But just be weary of them. A lot of things are newer. You just got to try them out and test them and see how they are. And my biggest piece of advice is it's fine for your hiring managers, your colleagues, everybody to know that you're using AI. That's fine. Just make sure when you're transitioning an AI thing to a personal thing, get rid of the quotes, get rid of the things that might have said, this query is from ChatGPT, things like that. So make sure you are kind of filtering things from the AI to the humanity side of it before you, relay them to candidates or colleagues or things like that. That's what I would say.
Very awesome.
Candidate experience, keep your word. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it.
All right, awesome. Short and sweet. All right, well, thank you so much, guys. I think that's, that wraps up our main part of the event, but we still have a Q&A and giveaways left. So, people would still want to stick around for that. So yeah, now it's time for our Q&A sessions. In case anybody has any questions throughout the session, feel free to drop them. We also have a couple of questions that, we received when we were promoting this event on socials, when we were talking about it here and there. We did receive a couple of questions, so I have some of those handy, but yeah, we'll wait to see, if the audience members have any questions live. So yeah, you can drop in your questions using the Q&A options on your screen, and on LinkedIn, you can just drop the questions in the chat, and same for YouTube. All right. See. All right, and
also, if anybody has advice too, or has a tool that you've used, or have, a user case scenario or something you want to talk about, that's good too.
Yeah. And one thing we've done before is, in case anybody from the audience, wants to come on camera and, just share their thoughts on something, we've done that in an event before as well. So in case anybody wants to do that, they can do that as well. They can just raise their hand and, we'll bump you up to panelist if that's possible. Yeah. But yeah. All right. So in the time that we get any questions, I'll just, read out a question that we got recently. Any of you can answer this. So we had somebody asking, how do you maintain personal connections when working with remote candidates you've never met in person before?
So I've actually been working remotely for 9 years. So being able to keep that human connection remotely, what it is that I think that when you get to know the candidate, so obviously I want to know, okay, what are your interests? Applying for the role, why are you interested in the company? But usually because I am like a sourcer, typically I'm the one that's proactively going out and searching for talent. But how I keep that human connection is I honestly, I communicate with them. Like I overly communicate, where it's, I keep them through throughout the process. I know typically sources, you find them, then once they apply, the recruiter takes over, but I still like to follow them through the entire process, and I keep them updated and let them know what's going on, especially if there's times where I feel like, okay, well, the recruiter has a lot on their plate. And if it helps for me to be able to at least be able to communicate with the candidates that I source, like that's how I'm able to keep that person-to-person human connection. Is I communicate and I see them as a person, and a lot of times I'll get candidates that are like, oh my gosh, I'm not used to this. Like, I'm not used to someone that actually cares. And I'm like, because at the end of the day, it's like, I try not to get too emotionally invested, where if someone doesn't get hired, then I'm like, oh, it ruins my day. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'm rooting for you I'm rooting for you. And so that's what I do, where I think communication is so important, just to keep those line of communications open. And a lot of candidates, they like to brainstorm with me. So of course, I did 15 years of career consultant. So a lot of times, even when I moved over to recruitment, I always kept that hat stays on. So I usually sometimes spend a little bit more time than I should on the phone with a candidate. But when they see that, I had a candidate who literally wasn't ready for a role, and a year later I reached out and they were like, wait, really? You still remembered me? And they got hired. So I'm like, I love to build relationships, and I keep those relationships. And I still have candidates even today that still stays in contact with me. And it's because of the relationships that I build over time. So I think even if it's remote, or even if it's, even if you're doing it remotely, people can feel the connection, and people can feel when you truly care, and when you're not thinking of them as just an applicant or thinking of them as just another resume, and people can feel that.
Don't just take note. I was gonna say, don't just take notes on the formal stuff. So if I'm interviewing David, I'm not just gonna write down he's looking for this salary, he's looking for this title. When I'm on the call and I say, when can you interview with the team, David? And he says, hey, I'm going on vacation to Europe for a few weeks. I can interview when I get back. Check when he gets back. Hey, how was Europe? How was your travel? Where did you go? The team's ready to interview with you. Keep that personal part of it, and take notes on that and remember those kinds of things, because it makes it a lot less salesy and a lot more personable throughout the process. So that's definitely an important thing to remember, all those other things about them too that's going on in their daily lives.
Thanks, Mike. So we actually have a question in the chat, and David is currently answering this live. But yeah, we have a question to the panel. What training/course should recruiters be taking now to keep up with AI and stay ahead of the AI wave, so to speak? So in case Mikey, David, Sharon, you have anything to add to this? Yeah.
So
what? Go ahead, David.
Go ahead, Sharon. Go ahead. You started.
Go ahead, David, because you weren't attacking. Go ahead. You were sitting back for a little bit.
All you.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm pretty sure there's because LinkedIn, they have their the courses that you can take on there as well. So I'm pretty sure that because they know that this huge wave with AI, I'm pretty sure you can find some on their courses on there. And so I was just gonna mention that, just kind of LinkedIn, because I know a lot of people are on LinkedIn right now anyway. But yeah.
That's what I just pulled up. Generative AI for recruiting professional certificate. So look into your company and see what tools they have. Does your team have the full LinkedIn recruiter thing? You can take the courses for free. If not, what kind of things does your company have for tuition reimbursement? There's Udemy and all those places like that are really good. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing where I always tell people, use your Boolean skills to find the right AI certificates, the relevant ones, things that are good to put on your resume versus ones that are just, anybody can get and put a badge on their profile. You want to find the ones that are relevant and with reputable companies and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think those are all the questions we had the time to take today. All right, so before we wrap up, as promised, we have some giveaways for our participants today. So David and Mike are offering a 1-hour personal consultation session for sourcing training each. Perfect for recruiters looking to enhance their sourcing skills with expert guidance. Next, we have Sharon giving away her brand magnet kit for recruiters, which includes a 30-minute career clarity and brand strategy session, plus a downloadable visibility and income kit with frameworks, ChatGPT prompts, AI tools to help you stand out and thrive in today's market. So that's 3 winners in total. Winners will be notified through email and connected with all of the panelists, and they'll also be announced on Recruit CRM's LinkedIn company page on Monday, 1st September at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So we'll make a post about the event and tag the winners in the comments. So watch your inbox and your feed. And with that, we've come to the end of our time together, and what an incredible session today has been. I want to sincerely thank each of you, each of our amazing panelists for sharing their experiences and strategies today with all of our audience members. And of course, to all of the audience members for participating, commenting, engaging with all of our panelists here as well. Let's do a lightning round of final thoughts. So one key takeaway you want everyone to remember for the year and times ahead. In one sentence, what's your parting advice? Let's start with you, Mikey.
Sorry, say it one more time.
in one sentence, what would be your parting advice to our audience members? So one key takeaway you want everyone to remember for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm just reading through the comments and all the nice things people are saying. Yeah, the biggest thing is think of yourself as the job seeker. As you're responding to people, think of it, is that something you want to get as a response, or is that a response you've gotten that's made you feel good in the past or not good? So put yourself in the shoes, even if you've not been laid off and job seeking a lot like me over the last few years. Make sure you're using the human connection. Empathy is a big thing. A lot of people are going through a lot with layoffs and things. So, do the best that you can, do as much as you can, whatever works for you. If you got to set up a tracker or a phone reminder, do whatever it takes to, keep in touch with people and keep them engaged and warm and make them know that you care.
All right, Sharon, what about you?
So I would say, just stay positive. There's a lot that's going on in the economy right now. whether it's layoffs and just there's a lot that's going on. And take care of yourself too. I think self-care is important. Like, I know we talk about the human touch, and I know we're talking about candidates and how we communicate and how we operate and how we do business with candidates. But at the same time too, as recruiters and sourcers and talent acquisition professionals, we tend to take on a lot personally too. And sometimes you have to separate, kind of like, okay, don't take this personal. And sometimes it's hard to not do that. So I think at the same time, because again, there's a lot of layoffs that happen. So you're probably seeing people on your teams that are being laid off. And when that's happening, that can take a toll. So I think that, you know, what's important is like, make sure you're taking care of your well-being, your mental, your physical, and make sure that you are, that self-care is on top of the list as well. Because I think that a lot of times people forget that, and don't forget that.
Awesome. David, anything from you?
Be genuine, be real, be authentic, be yourself, care, give a damn, go the extra mile, and leave a place better than you found it. And remember, we're in the human business, so don't be fake, and give people grace as they fail and stumble, and we all make mistakes as well. So, but stay curious.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Oh yeah, and a huge thank you to our audience again for, you know, engaging and asking some questions. If you found today's session valuable, we encourage you to share your feedback and spread the word about the event on social media. The recording is going to be available on demand right after the event gets over, and all the attendees will also get a recording sent to them. For those interested in learning more about Recruit CRM and how it can help you maintain those crucial human connections while staying organized and efficient, you can visit our website, book a free demo, or even sign up for our no commitment, unlimited free trial. And also connect with all of today's fantastic speakers on LinkedIn. The profile links are in the chat right now. We're also excited to continue these conversations on our social media platforms. So do follow us for the latest updates and information on more events coming up in the future. For weekly discussions on recruitment, technology, and maintaining that human touch, check out Recruit CRM exclusives, our blog, and also our newsletter. So that's a lot of links. All of these links are in the chat right now. And yeah, thank you again for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll see you at our next event.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.